Hey everybody, it's SaskiaSketches, and in today's video I'm going to show you how I use watercolours. Okay, so my first step normally is to tape my paper down, and I like to tape it to my cutting board instead of my desk because I can move the cutting board around should I need to, and that way if it's drying for like a while, I can just move it aside instead of just having it at my desk, and so I can optimize my workspace. Yeah, so then the next thing that I normally do is I just sketch my stuff out and I do the line work, and then I normally move on to the painting part right away. So that's what I do to prep for a larger watercolor piece. You might have seen my smaller pieces as well, the ones I do in watercolor. Let me see, like these for example. You can see that I didn't use any pencil to sketch with these. I just sketched these in ballpoint pen and I threw some watercolor over it. This is how I usually work. But if I'm doing an actual piece like this one, this is a commission, by the way. I got permission from my commissioner to make this into a YouTube video, so that way I could get both things done all at once, which is a win-win for me. So yeah, I will show you how I colour this, and I'll take you through the process of how I work with watercolours. So the first thing I usually do is I make the paper wet, and gotta be careful not to put too much or too little on there, so just make sure you have enough paint and enough water. And that is something that requires a little bit of practice, but once you work with watercolor more, you'll understand how to proportion your water and your paint. So just make sure everything is nice and wet. Also make sure that all your pencil lines have been erased, because pencil becomes permanent once you pencil marks become permanent once you paint over them. So yeah, you don't want pencil marks showing through your work if that is not your intention. Okay, and then usually what I do next is I just drop in a few colors just for the first layer. I normally think of the color scheme before I actually start painting, and that's what I've done here as well. And I just throw some color in, and I don't really try to keep things inside the lines, at least not for now, because these are watercolors, meaning they're not really going to listen to you. So when you work with watercolors, you need to be prepared to let them go and let them do their own thing, because that is what makes them so so beautiful. That's what why they work so well. And this composition is a circle based composition, so I'm going to have my strokes go in a circle as well, at least after I've gotten a solid layer down. So for this piece I want to mainly focus on using reds and yellows and greys. I think I'll use a Payne's grey as well. Yeah, so working with watercolors, it's very important to keep in mind that you need to use layers if you want to accomplish a cool watercolor piece. Normally it involves quite a lot of layers, and you don't have to be afraid of using layers. It's quite easy. And with those sketches, I normally don't layer up too much. I think I might want to put some more tape on here actually, so I don't end up painting on this part that I want to leave white. That is it for this first layer, and this is just the background and stuff, and I think once this is dry, I'll move on to the flowers and do a little bit more work on those. And then I'll do the character as well. Alright, so now all of this is dry, I'm going to move on to the flowers. Oh, I find it very annoying that I can't put my head right above it. So yeah, now I'm just going to take my time and colour in a couple of these. Could take a little while because I drew a lot of them, but it's therapeutic. I always find this fun to do. I'm ready to get to the yellow petals. I was thinking of making half the flowers yellow, half the flowers red or pink. I think that it would look quite nicely. Okay, so I just finished up all the yellow parts of the flowers. I may add in a couple bits of shading later on in this area, maybe in some of the bigger petals, but this is the first layer for those flowers. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the character, and I'm going to colour in everything that needs to be red and everything that needs to be yellow. Because when you look at this character's design, it's mostly he's mostly wearing black clothing, and his accents are red and yellow, and mainly red and then a little bit of yellow. So that's what I'm going to paint now. Ooh, I'm really looking forward to this hair. I've been loving drawing this hair, like the line art and everything. Oh, it was so much fun. It's so cool looking. And this colour is so gorgeous, and it fits so well, and I love it so much. So now you'll notice I've been using the dry on wet technique. So as well for the flowers as for the hair, I am painting with wet paint, obviously, on a dry piece of paper. So I've given this ample time to dry, and I do not want to go outside the lines. So I've given this ample time to dry, so now the paper is nice and flat again, and also very dry, so that my paint will not bleed anywhere. I haven't put it down. I usually like to go quite on top of, like get quite close in with my face when I'm painting, but I cannot do that now because the camera is rolling, and I would be putting my head in the way and blocking your view, which is not something that I intend on doing. But if it happens accidentally, I am sorry. Ah, look at that colour. Ooh, can't wait to shade this. I really love this red that I'm using. Normally when I have a red and I water it down, it becomes more of a pink, but this one keeps its red hue, which I really like. Could have mixed this one myself? I think I did. Yeah, I mixed it myself. Because sometimes you'll see here in my palette that I have some colours that aren't pre-mixed. So what I did with that is I would get watercolour from tubes, and I would put a few together to get a colour, And usually my tip for mixing good reds in with watercolors is I grab a color that resembles red closely, like this one for example. This one is supposed to be red, but if you water it down it becomes much more like a pink, even if you water it down just a little bit. And I will put a darkish reddish brown. This one is called oxygen brown, I think, and that works really well. If you mix those together, it makes a nice blood red yellow. Wow, blood red yellow. I mean, red. Blood red red. Yeah. I'll see myself out. Okay, so I went ahead and I did all the red details and the yellow details. I really had to get in closer, that's why I didn't film this part. But now I think it's time to move on to the rest of the colours that are not inside this colour scheme that I have picked. And the way I would usually go about this is by mixing all the colours that are in my colour scheme. If I need a darker colour, for example, I like to mix them from the colours that I already have, but because these ones are both primaries, I think I might pick another colour to fit inside the colour scheme, so I can water that one down, maybe use it to shade the white shirt. And if I put them together I might be able to get a good dark grey. So I'm thinking of picking a purple for this, but I'll think about that a little bit more as I do the skin first, because you can mix a skin tone very easily with a yellow and a red, so that's what I'm going to do first. Usually for skin I pick a yellow ochre or a raw sienna, but it's also quite easy to do it with yellow and just water that down a lot. And add in a little bit of red. And this is how I mix very light skin tones, and this character has relatively light skin. For darker skin tones are much easier because I already have a bunch of pre-mixed browns, so that shouldn't be a problem. That's a little bit too, yeah, so it's quite easy. It's just watered down orange basically, or more on the yellow side. Yeah, and this way it also fits nicely into the colour scheme, because we didn't grab any other colours that to add into you know, already pre-existing colour scheme. That's a bit too much, so yeah, see, it's a pretty nice skin tone, if I do say so myself. Yeah, and for these light skin tones it's just important to just water them down a lot, because they are very desaturated skin tones, very light. Okay, that's the skin done. Soak up a little bit extra. Yeah, alright, so then I think I will be adding a purple into the mix, so I can mix some greys and stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to add this dark purple, our black substitute, to the rest of this piece, and I will realize that this is not as dark as I want it, but it's a good start for a first layer. So that's what I'm going to do. Because you can always make your watercolors darker, you can never make them lighter again. You need to preserve your highlights if you're doing watercolor. Oh, that's not completely dry yet. Okay, I did all the darker colors in the piece, and now once this is dry, I think it's time to move on to shading. And I really like to use the darkest color in my color scheme for shading as well. So I will be mostly shading with this dark purple. I'm not really too concerned with the light source because I'm not having an extreme, I'm not painting any extreme lighting, so just make all these teeny tiny shadows in this guy's hair. Behind his ear. These kinds of shadows are my favorite ones to do. Just going over these parts again to make sure they dry evenly. You even get to switch to a bigger brush to get to cover these areas a bit more quickly. Usually when you're working with these kinds of odd shapes that you can't really do in one brush stroke, it's nice to go over them again to make sure they'll dry evenly. This part of the purple is gotten more saturated because the water has evaporated from it, so that's why this is more concentrated pigment, and that's why I can use this to shade this. Also, by the way, if you want to commission me too, you can go to my Instagram and we'll talk about it or figure something out. Because I don't have any set commission prices. I always think that you know, every piece is unique and every situation is unique, every commission is unique, so I think all the prices should be, you know, unique as well. It's not like I'm going to give away pieces for much less if I like you or not, but it's more it's more so like, hey, if you ask me to do a watercolor piece this size, but if you want me to do this much detail, or if you only want me to you know, paint a blob, it's you know, it's going to it's going to be different. The price is going to have to be different because, you know, every piece is unique, like I said. So, but don't worry, I won't charge a fortune. I think my prices are very reasonable for what you're getting, because I'm pouring a lot of time and effort into all these pieces. And if you're lucky, I might even make a YouTube video out of it. Okay guys, I'm almost done. I'm just wrapping up some of the shading on these petals. So, I want to thank you all so much for watching all the way to the end, and I hope you've learned something about watercolors, or, you know, if you've just enjoyed the video, just watching me do some painting. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching again. Please leave a like on this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. Have a great weekend guys, keep on sketching, bye!